I am the community manager of Lord of the Rings Online, Cordovan, otherwise known as Jerry Snook, and as you can see in our title here, we have a special guest with us today. So let me get him on for, I believe this may be our first visit, certainly our first live stream visit, but maybe the first time he's actually been in front of a camera in front of all of you fine Lord of the Rings Online players. Say hello to Chance Thomas. Hello, Chance. Thanks very much for taking time out of your busy day to chat with us for this afternoon.
Jerry, hi. Thanks for having me on the show, and I especially appreciate you making the extra effort to come in today.
Oh, it's no problem.
On your schedule.
Yeah, I'm otherwise on vacation, but I'm not going to miss something like this. The opportunity to get you as a guest on our program here and talk a little bit about things that we will talk about in a couple of seconds here are just too good a chance to pass up. So I really appreciate you being here, and I know our chat room here is very excited to see you as well. People waving hello to you, saying they love your music, and thanking you for coming out today. So, all right, well, so let's... Oh, no, go for it.
The announcement, the fact that you flew in from the Bahamas just for this, we all appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Not quite the Bahamas. I got this guy with me here today. He's going to be with me for the week. I've got the week off with him, so He's just here to say hello. So, all right, so let's get to the announcement. We are here to announce that we have been able to work out an agreement with you to do music for our Mordor expansion.
Yes!
It's a long time coming. Took a little while to get here, but we really appreciate it, and I think you're very much looking forward to it as well here, huh?
Jerry, I love working with Lord of the Rings Online, and I love the team. And the team and I, we came to this conclusion a long time ago, but the attorneys, they had to do their thing and get their fingers in it. But yeah, everything got signed yesterday, and it's so thrilling to be back in Middle-earth, and how exciting to be bringing music for this new expansion, Mordor, with all these crazy and interesting and creepy and scary and fascinating places that we're getting ready to go explore.
Clearly, as our Lord of the Rings Online community in our chat room here will attest, you are no stranger to doing music for Lord of the Rings Online, but it's been a little while here, hasn't it?
It has. The last thing I did was the Riders of Rohan expansion.
All right. So a little bit different. On the one, you've got the Fields of Rohan and Horse Lords and all that sort of thing. A little bit different from Mordor.
What a different feel. Yeah. I've been going through the game art, screenshots, reading through Chris Pearson's massive document. Oh, wouldn't you guys like to get your eyes on these pages?
I know, right?
But yeah, it is, in its own way, it's incredibly frightening, but also beautiful in its own way. It's such a strange juxtaposition, and as a composer, I'm trying to reflect that in the music that I've started writing for it.
So, how do you get started trying to do what really is a pretty significant project here? I mean, clearly it's going to take a little bit of time to do all this scoring work and recording work and all that. What is step one?
Step one for me is today, and always has been, to immerse myself in the world. I tell young composers, I said, if you really want to find the right voice for your project, take the method acting approach to music scoring. That is, put yourself in that world. Imagine what you might feel like if you were really standing in the shadows of this giant forge that's been destroyed, with smoke coming up and the smell of sulfur all around you, and worrying about, is the captain of the pit going to come around from behind the corner and take me out? If you can actually feel yourself there in that spot, then the music just starts to come naturally.
Right.
So that's the first step. That's why, as I famously show young composers, my copies of the original literature with all the stick notes and underlining that I did in each of these books to really understand the role of music in Tolkien's worlds.
It's interesting you mentioned that because music, there's a lot of fantasy series out there, and Tolkien in particular is known for his singing, his poetry, the song-smithing that goes on in the stories themselves, While clearly you don't hear the music, when you're reading the book, you imagine what the way they sound, and you certainly read a lot of their lyrics and things like that. It's interesting that Tolkien has long been had music be a part of his world.
So I know that Lord of the Rings doesn't have access to the Silmarillion, but we all know the Silmarillion's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting to me is if you read about how Tolkien describes the creation itself, song went out into the void, and then it was no longer void. And then the sound began to take shape. So clearly, music is preeminent to and superior to all visuals. No offense, Todd DeMille.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things I imagine will be particularly interesting as a composer for the Mordor expansion is, on the one hand, we have dark, evil, the darkness of Mordor and Sauron and all the rest. But I mean, the other opportunity with that darkness comes a lot of heroism. I mean, this is the defining moment for the Fellowship, for Frodo, for Sam, for the fate of the ring. And so you have a juxtaposition there where you both get to do some of perhaps maybe your darkest writing for LOTRO yet, but also get to bring that heroic feel to it all as well.
For sure. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is when I wrote LOTRO Legacy for the Rohan expansion that became the menu music, the last theme that you hear in there, bum ba ba bum ba da 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 da. So that was the theme that I envisioned for Gondor and for Aragorn, and it's very heroic, it's very regal, it's very noble, and we'll be hearing that make an appearance in this score, along with the dark, creepy, frightening music.
So can I ask a little bit about the process?
Sure.
Are you a sort of pencil on paper notation, or is it a high-tech thing nowadays? How do you go about doing your scoring?
So it's very high-tech. In fact, it's the highest tech of all. I tell people that the most important technology you'll ever get to work with, young composers, is lodged between your two ears.
Nice.
Right? All the millions of neurons and things that comprise this workshop of imagination. So, for example, yesterday, after we signed the contract, I started scoring Udun. Udun. And I pulled up images that the team had sent me. I read the description. I imagined that I was there, and I started to hear in my mind what kinds of sounds, what kinds of tonalities and dissonances, what colors and musical flavors would reflect that. And as I heard these ideas start to present themselves in my mind, in my workshop of imagination, then I went over to my keyboard and I started pulling up sounds and I started playing in ideas until I found resonance between what I was hearing from the speakers and what I had imagined in my mind. And to me, that's the best way to approach a score. For me, to find the feeling that I've imagined as I put myself in that world. And that's how I did it with Rohan. That's how I did it with Moria. That's how I did it with the Shire and all that early work that we did for Shadows of Angmar. It's just my approach, Jerry.
So we find the themes and then work them into the larger pieces that you do, that sort of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what about the actual recording process? I see clearly you've got a nice studio back there. I don't know if is this your home studio, or are you in the main recording studio there?
So a little bit of background.
Mm-hmm.
In 1998, I opened up a company called Huge Sound.
Oh, okay.
And Huge Sound was my company for all the years that I did all the earlier LOTRO work. Well, last fall, I sold Huge Sound to a larger entertainment conglomerate. And they've built a big, beautiful studio in downtown Salt Lake City. And I have my studio and my office here at that new facility, the new Huge Sound post-production. So I write all the music here in my studio, and I'll deliver mock-ups, which is like synthesized realizations of the score, to Todd and Chris and Rob and the other people on the team to listen to and approve. And once we get all the mock-ups approved, then I bring in the orchestra, I bring in the choir, and we'll record it all now here in our own new facility and mix it and then deliver it to the game.
Well, that's fantastic. I didn't realize that that was a studio that you were that familiar with. I guess I thought it was maybe a something you just sort of hired out or whatever. But that's cool.
Thanks,
very
man.
nice. Actually, while we're talking here in the next couple minutes, I'm going to show off a few pictures of that studio. So let me actually cut some of my camera here, and then I can bring that to people that I think you'll enjoy. So ultimately, are we going to be doing some live orchestral recording here with this, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're already setting up the sessions, in fact. So what you're looking at here, this is my writing space. You can see the keyboard and the control room kind of at the far end of the studio with I love to use background art from projects that I've done over the years. And then you can see the couch because sometimes I put in some late nights and I got to take a little nap.
Sure. You have a nice some nice awards there too. That's got to be a real honor.
Oh, so. You like those bowling trophies?
Yeah, bowling trophies, right? Is that what they for? A dart league or something? I don't know. No.
Yeah.
No. I'm kidding, of course. I see some pretty good ones there.
Of them.
Yeah.
No, so several of those are for work in video games. Some of them are from work in television. A couple of them are from work in film.
Nice. All right. This one is I believe, a panorama of the large recording space.
Right. This is our sound stage. Mm-hmm. You can't see the far right and the far left, but it's a very large room. We'll get about 45 strings in there, probably a dozen brass, 24 voice choir. And I'll track them, all those sections, one at a time so we can really dial it in. It's a great sounding room.
Oh, wow. So you're not just talking about a couple of boom mics here. You really individually mic a lot of this, huh?
Yeah. So we put up. So what we do is we hang this thing called a decatree, which is a certain configuration of microphones. We hang it up super high in the room, and that captures the overall sound. Then we'll mic individual sections. Every 2 or 3 violins, for example, will get its own spot mic. Every bass player will get its spot mic. Every couple of cellos will get its spot mic, etc. And then if you'll show the picture of Studio A, I think that one might be next.
That's your lobby. Studio A. Here we go. All right.
Right. So then we'll bring all of those microphones into that recording console, which you see on the left-hand side of the picture, and find the right balance between the room sound and the individual spot sound.
Wow. That's beautiful. I've been in some studios that done some recording musically myself, but never anything nearly so nice looking. It's,
Dude, you gotta
very, very nice.
City and visit us. Bring your flute.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your bass.
Very much so. All right, and then let me just show off that lobby pic here as well. It's some nice artwork and a nice Huge Sound post-production studio. So maybe we should give them a quick plug here. If someone is curious about learning more about Huge Sound, what would you suggest?
Okay, so you can go to hugesound.com on the internet and learn all about us. Our company is based on 3 divisions: picture, music, and sound. So we do picture editing, like a TV series. We'll send in all their dailies. We'll organize them. We'll cut them together. We do finishing work. We do color correction. So that's kind of the picture division. The music division, I head that up. We do obviously scoring for video games and animated films and TV shows. We also produce recording artists. We have a record label, and of course the nice sound stage. And then we also have a sound division, which does sound design for TV shows and movies, Foley work, dialogue recording, that kind of stuff.
Well, fantastic. All right, let me get our images up here again. Refresh Skype.
So while you're waiting for that, I want to tell a story, and I want to call out somebody here on the air.
Yes, please do.
So I think it was a couple of years or so ago. One of your longtime players from the UK, a man named Patrick Palmer, heard the news that, at least at that point, Turbine had made the decision not to bring me back for any more work on the game. And Patrick happened to like the work that I've done for the game.
Yeah.
And so he went on to change.org and started a petition basically saying, please bring Chance Thomas back to do more music for LOTRO. And a surprising number of people signed and commented on that petition. Well, Patrick, if you're listening today, and all those who joined with him, I just want to say your voices have been heard. Here we are.
Absolutely. It is going to be such a huge honor. And for those who maybe missed the first couple of minutes of the stream here, let's restate what's happening here, which is that we've reached an agreement with you, Chance, to score the music for our Mordor expansion. At this point, for those, probably the most pressing question I get is, when? When is this thing happening? This summer is, at this point, the most detailed time frame we're able to provide in regard to the Mordor expansion, but keep an eye out on LOTRO.com. We're going to clearly have this going to our Bull Roarer public preview server relatively soon, and you'll have a lot more information coming soon about the Mordor expansion as well. Also, I think we might have another announcement here coming perhaps next week on the live stream here with you, Chance, as well. So if you're into Chance Thomas's music, and I think we may have something more to say next week too. So
yeah, we've got announcement number 2 in store for you guys 1 week from today. So make sure you come back.
So let me just ask one more question here about the scoring for Mordor. And this is actually something I don't know the answer to. I'm a community guy. I'm not a content designer. So
right.
when someone comes to you and says, here's a section of the game, this is where the fate of the ring is determined. Here's where the final confrontation with this person or that person happens. How do you get communicated sort of the themes that they're looking for, the sort of story that they're hoping to get supplemented with the musical accompaniment there?
So I spend a lot of time talking with the design team, and we've already had a couple of phone conferences, and we exchange a lot of email, and I get sent big, thick documents. And with that information, we cobble together a music design. We decide, okay, this part of the experience we're going to tell with cinematics. And I will score those, directly to picture for maximum dramatic input or maximum dramatic impact. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes.
So this part's cinematics. And we'll say, now we'll do some exploratory music. And here's how we're going to approach exploration. Maybe there'll be a piece of music that brings you into the area. And then we'll do variations on that will fade in and fade out as you go through the experience. Then we figure out, okay, how are we going to handle combat? How much combat is there going to be? How long is the combat liable to last? What's the difference between skirmishes and boss battles? And then I'll design a music solution for that so that hopefully by the end of the day, when the expansion comes out and Patrick and other people are out there playing the game, the music experience feels seamless, it feels inspiring, and if we've done our job, it'll be a great experience for the players.
Very nice. For the last, say, about 5 minutes here, let's take a few questions from our chat rooms, both
Great.
Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. First off, I did want to mention, let me see if I can get that. Brenlew on Twitch says, I hang out in Rohan just to hear your music, Chance. So I know that Brenlew is not alone in that. I often hear on the forums, Facebook, things like that, people say, hey, it was rainy, or it was a day where I'm just hanging out inside or at work. I just go into an area of Lord of the Rings, crank up the music, and just relax. So that's the kind of impact, clearly, that your music's having there. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That is so touching. Thank you.
Yeah. How long this is a fairly generic question, but how long does it usually take to make a song? Well, I guess in this case, a specific piece of music.
That's a great question because the answer is all over the map. I mentioned earlier in the show, yesterday, after we signed the contracts, I started working on music for Udun. And I've been reading about it. I've been looking at the images. I've kind of been, marinating on it for several days. And it came together fairly quickly. By about 10 o'clock, no, it was earlier than that. By about 8:30 last night, I had a good 2-minute piece of introductory exploration music done for Udun. On the other hand, if something is hard and doesn't come together, it can take 2 or 3 days, to get that same 2-minute piece of music done. So yeah, it depends.
This is a fairly lore-heavy question. I hope you can remember this scoring area. I'm kind of asking you a question that may make you dig back a bit.
Okay.
W7964, related to Udun, says, is there a notable difference between, say, Udun and, say, Gorgoroth and how you compose? Does it matter sort of the region there? Do you pay attention to that? Or do you tend to... Okay.
It does. So, for example, Udun is such an industrial hellscape. You've got these forges, you've got war camps, you've got towering mills, all in a state of destruction, as opposed to, let's say, Dora Marth, which is a big, empty, open, forsaken, barren place with cracks in the ground and fissures and fire of smoke coming up. So each place has its own personality. And I need to understand what the personality of each section is so that I can reflect that appropriately in the music. So when you leave Dora Marth, or when you go into Lingris, every place you enter has its own particular flavor, and you feel like you've entered a new world. And of course, the art also reflects that.
Thaliel on Twitch says, what do you find is the most challenging about making music for Tolkien's world specifically? Is there a specific challenge for, say, Tolkien as opposed to other, say, fantasy or game realms that you do?
For sure. So, the history of Tolkien, the number of fans who love it. I'll give you an example. Compare writing music for Lord of the Rings Online, which has this vast history and so many people who have clear ideas in their minds about what Lord of the Rings should sound like, based partially on the fact that the professor himself seemed to fill his books with music.
Right.
And then on the other hand, The Void, which is a new virtual reality experience, which just came out into the world, right? So it's a totally different experience. With The Void, we're creating something new. With Lord of the Rings Online, we're trying to figure out what the professor and all the fans and all the people who love that, what they feel in their heart about it. And trying to figure out what that is tricky business.
Absolutely, I bet so. T-Mac Q says, do you keep a catalog of sort of the themes you have for every area of the game so that you can kind of reference them as you need to, or is it just sort of all in your head?
Yes, both. So when I first started working on music based on Lord of the Rings, which is actually in 1998, for a game that Sierra Online was creating, which never saw the
Sure.
light of day, and it was called J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth Online.
Mm-hmm.
For that work, I created a style guide, 25, 26 pages, and I outlined, okay, here's how your dwarven themes ought to be built. Here's how your elven themes should be derived, and all that kind of stuff. So I still have that document, and I still do refer back to it from time to time for those sort of things. But that was almost 20 years ago, and my interpretation of Tolkien has grown since then. So a lot of the stuff since then is in my head.
Nice, nice. All right, so let me get one last good question here, if I can think of it. The music in LOTRO is the best ever in an MMO. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you saying that. Yep.
Thank you.
Is it Bring Your Hobbit to Work Day? No, this is my son Jeffrey. He's here for the afternoon. Yep. What was the first piece you wrote for the game, if you remember?
Ever?
Yes. Do you remember sort of
I
that
do.
first note? Okay.
I do. And it never showed up in the game.
Oh, no. Typical, huh?
Well,
Yeah.
This
Yep.
was for the Sierra project, and it was actually, I took the poem, The Road Goes Ever On and On, and I
Okay.
set that to music in a song. And it really was not very good. But a few years later, maybe this might be an interesting story for some. A few years later, I was driving home. This is when I lived in California. I was driving home from San Francisco, and I lived in the foothills just outside Yosemite National Park. And it was nighttime. And I was thinking about that poem, The Road Goes Ever On and On. And I had what I think was a little bit of a musical epiphany, and came up with a new approach to how to set that poem to music. I heard the melody, I heard the arrangement, I felt the rhythm, and who knows, maybe someday that particular song will find its way back into the game world. But that was the very first thing I ever wrote.
I'm very curious about that. All right, so I think we're going to have you stop by next week here for another little bit of something to say. But until then, I need to let you get going, and I need to get going myself. Clearly, I've got to get some lunch. Yep.
Jerry, tell him the truth. This week was a big music announcement.
Yep.
Next week is another really big music announcement. So please come back and join us again.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you so much, Chance, for visiting. And thank you very much for watching over on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook.